Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our daily news analysis. And as always, we are referring to the Hindu newspapers daily edition. Now, this is the front page, and you can see they're talking about party politics. So here we have Tamil Nadu-based political party known as the AIA-DMK. So here the former chief minister actually, so this camp, rival Paneer Selvam ousted and Palniswamy to lead the AIA-DMK. Now, if you just do not know this, this was the faction that was being led by Jayalalitha camp. So this was it. And there is another political party, which is obviously the ruling party. It is the DMK group. So that was being led by the Karunanidhi. Now, his son Stalin is the chief minister. Now, let's look at the other news. Congress acts against Lobo and Kamath. And they have petitioned for disqualification petitions against these people. So the allegation being that they're hobnobbing with the ruling BJP. So again, this is associated with the issue of defection. Okay. Now moving on to the next news, neighbor arrested for raping 2 minor girls. Now this we can look at it this way. We can take the context out of here. It is about women's safety, a topic that is directly mentioned in your syllabus. So women's safety, then the rising incidence of crime against women. What are the reasons? What corrective measures need to be taken? All of that. Government to restore monuments under its jurisdiction. Article per se, again, not really important. What we must be interested in, one theme is like monuments depict heritage, right? So why should we, or why is the heritage important? Why should we protect it? So that is one way of looking at it. Other is like with reference to monuments itself, what measures should be adopted? What steps are being taken to conserve the monuments? So there are a list of initiatives. We must be aware of that. Now moving on to the states news, states page, we have over here, there is a reference of MLA local area development scheme. So one of the parties in Uttar Pradesh, they say, Rashtriya Lok Dal, they are saying that the funds that you get, who gets? The MLAs get from the MLA local area development scheme should be used for the welfare. At least 35% of that should be used on the welfare of scheduled caste community. So that is what it is said. Now here we get the MLA local area development scheme. Now within Uttar Pradesh, naturally when it says MLA, it is associated with the respective state legislature, right? So respective state. So Uttar Pradesh MLA LAD fund was increased from 3 to 5 crore in May this year. Now this is indicative of one thing, that MLA LAD scheme is not uniform across the country. It is different for different states. The policies are made by different states over here. So naturally, UPSC is unlikely to ask a question because that will be a very disputable thing. Like if it says, what is the corpus of fund for the respective MLA LAD? It is not possible. But it can definitely, there will be uniformity in MP local area development scheme. And this is very, very important. Now in this, let us see the functioning of the MP LAD scheme. I feel it can be asked in the exam. So what happens is that naturally the member of parliament, or be it MLAs, they are representatives of the people. And one of the reasons for voting them was that they look after they act on the welfare of, they do things which result in the welfare of the people. Now to make them more proactive, the government, at least at the central level, they have initiated the scheme according to which rupees 5 crore, annually rupees 5 crore is given to the respective district authorities. right? So within the district with constituency is there. So for that, money is already given to the authorities, executive over there. The MPs or the MLAs, in this case MPs, can recommend works, recommend what they want. For example, they want a water tank should be there. There's a water issue over there. They want a community school should be there. They want works on the road condition to be improved, or parks to be built. So that could be, so members of parliament can recommend work to the district authorities, and that has to be done because that money is for that purpose only. So at the central level, it is Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Now, if you look closely, don't we feel that the legislature is getting into the executive's domain and it is affecting the principle of separation of powers? So that is one thing, theme, that is it constitutional? The court has agreed that it is constitutional, but then it is anyways a point of debate over here. Then we find lack of very poor implementation of the MP-led scheme. One of the reasons is that the funding is not being provided. So this is one issue. So one is about the implementation of the scheme, implementation not being very, very effective, and other perspective is from the point of view of constitution. In any case, it will be asked in the GS2 paper only, be it constitution, be it governance. Okay, now we have the World Population Day. Just a second. Yeah. So World Population Day, and UP Chief Minister, obviously it's a bit polarizing. A population stabilization should not spark demographic imbalance. So this remark has come referring to Muslims basically. They're not stating it, but knowing the way it is, the politics of the country. Okay. So if it's implying that if the majority community engages in in population stabilization, then other community will increase, so that demographic imbalance will take place. Now, this is actually a myth, and commonly I find this. So this is actually a myth, and I want to show you a data over here. And this is very important from the point of view of population. So there is this concept known as fertility rate. Fertility rate, that is how many children a female may give birth to. And there is one more concept known as the total fertility rate. That is, what is the minimum required, minimum children that a woman must bear so that the population remains stable. That is, it replaces the population that is about to die. So replacement level. So according to this over here, yeah, the fertility rate across religions is going close to this figure of 2.1. So earlier it was on the plus side, even for the Muslims, Hindus also. But look at it. The National Family Health Survey, Hindu is at 1.94%, Muslim is at 2.36%. So that there is an improvement that is taking place. And other communities, it is actually on a decline. That means the population will decline. So the ideal figure is 2.1 according to the United Nations. Now I want to come on to then another concept over here. That is the issue of population control, right? So issue of population control over here, family planning. So that is again a very, very important theme. I'm getting some clear space here. Okay. So this is important. Now, with reference to the family planning thing, focus has been on the use of contraceptives, sterilization, etc. So that has been an approach. But this is a theme from UPSC perspective and sociological studies that has been an approach, but the approach hasn't been that they are being looked as people. If they are developed naturally, the population levels would come down. So that approach has not been looked into. If urbanization takes place, if so from rural to urban, the cost of living increases. So naturally, the people would bear less child because they will have to bear the expenses. Likewise, with education of the girl child, especially at the girl child. So, and she pursues a job later. So naturally, the teen pregnancies, so like those events would actually come down as a result of this. So the fertility rate would actually come down automatically. So this approach has not been looked into. In general, the government's approach has been towards contraceptive sterilization, so those direct interventions. Okay, now we are on the states page again. So Andhra Pradesh, Godavari Delta in the grip of floods. Now I'm giving you this assignment. Yesterday also I told you. So you have to look at in the map area, the areas are surrounding it, north of this, south of this, on the atlas. This is important. Then naturally we get this theme over here from the point of view of GS3, disaster management, that is flood management. So what steps, what mitigation measures must be taken? Because this news is only about what all is taking place, but from your perspective, who wants to get into the services, will be part of the policy making or policy implementation. So that aspect you have to prepare from that side. Evacuation apace at Bhadra Chala, right? So again associated with Godavari. So where is this? So Bhadra Chalam is important. This is the town in Telangana besides the Godavari river. The huge 17th century Bhadrachalam or Sita Ramachandra Swami temple complex is dedicated to Lord Ram and has many ornate carvings. Right, so that is why this topic must have been there in the news. Contempt plea, likely 2 times contempt is there, so we'll come to this. Okay, we can. Vijay Mallya is also charged with contempt, so let's look at this. So Article 129 provides for the provision, Article 129 at the Supreme Court, and Article 215 for the High Court allows the court to issue contempt of court. That is, somebody has not agreed or taken action according to the directions of the court. So that is a contempt. And besides this has been codified. It has been made more detailed by the Contempt of Court Act. So it allows the Parliament to elaborate upon this law. So the Constitution has only provided a provision. This has been reinforced by the Parliament. Need system to identify illegal loaning apps. So it is about some apps which are using some malpractices to issue loans, etc. So this is there. Then there was some board takes over virtual queue system. Okay. Now the reason why I'm doing this is associated with Travancore. Police to manage pilgrim inflows. My idea is about secularism in India. So here we find that the state can intervene in religious institutions for maintaining public order. So police is doing this, right? So we have a different model of secularism as compared to that of the West or the French, like that. Twice or thrice questions have been asked very recently. So we have to be mindful of that aspect. The new normal of political shifts and splits and shifts, right? So it's about defection. So we have already done this. Okay. Now this is the G20 foreign affairs ministers meeting had taken place recently at Bali, and India's foreign minister and China's foreign minister Wang Yi. So they met. So this editorial is about this. So here Mr. Jaishankar had reiterated that normalcy in the border issue is very, very important. We need resolution of the boundary crisis and full disengagement from all friction areas. So that is necessary. But Beijing is saying that, for us, it is very important. But for Beijing, they say that the things can be normal with this also. We should work on other issues like multilateral grouping and BRICS, SEO. We should work on a fairer international order. So it says like you have boundary issues are fine, as we have boundary issues, but we must look at other issues. Well, Mr. Jaishankar is saying that boundary issue for any country is very, very important. You have encroached into a boundary. So first talk about this and then we'll talk about other issues. So that is what this article is saying. So it seems like India and China are on a different track. Okay. Safety in the sky. This is about safety regulations. A lot of incidents have taken place in the airline domain, safety related. So the Directorate General of Civil Aviation should have no tolerance for laxity, right? I'm not doing this, not really. Okay. The scam fault line is damaging Indian banking. So more steps are required to prevent frauds. So that is required naturally, and which includes tightening the internal and external audit system. Now, it's basically the issue of non-performing assets. So in the NPA issue over here, and naturally NPA is when the bank is not able to retrieve money from the people whom they had given money, right? So be it corporates, etc. So one reason could be that the corporates had made bad business decision and now they are not functioning well. Other thing is that the corporate is willfully has taken money and then they're not returning. And this could be corporate, it could be a businessman, small businessman, anybody. So willfully they are committing a fraud and they are not returning money. As it happened with reference to Vijay Mallya. So Vijay Mallya, a lot of shell companies have been exposed, which were laundering money from India to outside. So Nirav Modi case, right? So Nirav Modi case was there, Andhra Bank fraud, PMC fraud, PMC scams, all of this number of issues have been given over here. So that is one thing. Now, naturally, to stop this, we need to improve the regulatory oversight. So that is one thing. We need to have regulatory reforms. So it's more about what mitigation measures should be taken. So this should be done. And further, there should be more involvement of chartered accountants, what this article is saying, and maybe because he's not. So more involvement of the CAs with reference to internal and external audits. So the auditing should be improved. Then there should be faster rotation of employees. Employees, if there are employees who remain there for a longer period of time, so the corporates or anybody who, especially who has a bad motive, can make a deal with the corporate employees over here. But if the employees are fast changing, then naturally the new employee will not take upon the burden that was created by the mistakes of the previous employee. So fast rotation of employees is required. So that is one reform it is saying. Then use of information technology for better oversight. So effective management information system should be there, naturally at the banking level also, and which can be linked to the regulatory setup. And we can always incorporate the artificial intelligence. Okay, so this is what it is saying. And it is also saying one more thing, that the reasons for fraud, reasons for the rising NPA are primarily twofold. I'll make it threefold. So twofold. So one is that once the loan is given, I'm not just talking about fraud. So once the loan is given, the banks are not monitoring the assets. The bankers are not monitoring the assets as to have the assets started earning revenue or not, so that they are not doing it. Right, so that aspect is not taking place. And naturally, insufficient due diligence. So that is not taking place. And I said we'll make it threefold. So those employees that have been there for this very long period of time, and banks also. So they feel that if these assets, if wrong conduct is expressed, or if it is reflected that the loans have become NPAs, that is the banks are not getting money back from these assets, so there will be greater scrutiny and there will be accountability on the employee or the bank. So there is a tendency to engage in evergreening of loans. So the loans, they keep giving out more and more of money, so that it is reflected that now the money is going, by the time the money comes back from this asset, that will take time. So it's more of an accounting exercise, but the banks are the net losers over here, and the quantum of the loss actually keeps increasing for the banks. Okay, why the world needs peace in Ukraine? Then comprehending public health. And here it is saying, this is with reference to Tamil Nadu, and it is saying that when we talk about public health, your focus should also be on disease prevention. So disease prevention should be given a priority besides maintaining a better health infrastructure. We need to work on disease surveillance and epidemiology. So this is basically analysis or trends of diseases, new viruses, which may cause an epidemic or a disease. So it's about that. So we need to work on that dimension also. Okay, so now we have an article on dark matters, which is basically an explainer, which I feel could be important both. One is for your science and tech GS3 mains, and the next is obviously for the prelims. Now the first question is naturally, what is a dark matter? So dark matter is, it's presumed that in the universe, it is only 5% of the matter that we can see, and the remaining which we cannot see is dark matter. So we call it dark because it is not emitting light. So they do not emit light. And that is because they do not have any charge. But they are still existing. They're not emitting light, but they still exist. We cannot see them, but they are there. Like air is there, we cannot see it, but the air is still there. We can feel the air. And we are breathing, of course. Okay. So, and matter because, so this is there. So since they are there, they are still having other properties like gravitation, right? So those things are also there. Gravitational field, etc. They are there. Okay. Now, why this news is there? It has always been there. So it is about talking about a detector experiment that was recently conducted in the United States. So this is known as the Lux Zeppelin in South Dakota. So this is the most sensitive dark matter detector in the world. Right, so this is it. And they do not have a charge. Then here we get what are the candidates for dark matter particles. Not here, we are just looking at neutrino over here. So there are many other articles actually, particles. So it's talking about Z boson particle, but neutrino, because I'm saying this because in Indian Neutrino Observatory, right? So in Tamil Nadu, this observatory is to come up. So neutrino a topic is a very important topic from the point of view of GS3 mains. And from pre, of course, what are the properties of the neutrino? There is a protest with the site that has been earmarked for the INO. Then the new guidelines to prevent unfair trade practices. So this has been given by the Central Consumer Protection Authority. I think we had covered this earlier. So we had done this earlier, so we're not taking it up. We don't really need to also. Okay, next is Feeling the Forest. This is about the Forest Rights Act and Forest Rights Act and the updated or the notified the forest conservation rules. Again, this article is not telling us about the forest conservation rules. Maybe it is difficult to find. That is maybe the reason. So it is basically talking about the theme of the Forest Rights Act, which is using the Forest Rights Act. One is it provides the rights to the tribal of the particular place, and using the Forest Right Act as a conservation tool by linking, the rights of the people, tribals, so they making them important stakeholders in the conservation of the forest itself. So what this article is saying is that the Forest Rights Act has not been used, or there has been a limited use for conservation as a conservation tool. Okay, so let's look at the Forest Rights Act over here. So it recognizes the rights of forest-dwelling tribal communities and other traditional forest dweller to forest resources. Okay. Then the gains that come from the minor forest produce, like twigs, etc. So not the major tree, but whatever falls off from the tree, or whatever fruits are coming from the tree, or flowers, etc. So that they can use. And it says the act further enjoins upon the Gram Sabha and the rights holder the responsibility of conservation and protection of biodiversity, wildlife, etc. in that region. Further, the Gram Sabha is also a highly empowered body under the Act, enabling the tribal population to have a decisive say in the determination of local policies and schemes impacting them. Fine. So it's about the Gram Sabha. And now look at this way, that if land has to be diverted or anything for any mining activity or any industrial activity, so the Gram Sabha's recommendation is very, very important over there. So they have to be taken on board. So it cannot be like somebody says this forest, I want mining activity, so they start. So people have to be taken on board at least. And they have to be made convinced about the benefits that may accrue to them because of that activity. Okay. So I was reading this Forest Rights Act, then I went into the clarification part. Is the permission required for, is it mandatory? That aspect I still could not find it. But this was the letter from the secretary actually, which is giving certain clarification on the Forest Rights Act. So it says no permission is required under the Forest Conservation Act since the FRS frees the forest rights of all incumbents and procedural requirements. And it talks about Section 3(2) of the Forest Rights Act. So where all places the permissions are not required for diversion. So let's refer directly Section 3 of the Forest Rights Act. So Section 2 provides for which all purposes the permission is not required. So that is given. Yeah, provided that such diversion of the forest land shall be allowed only if the forest land to be diverted for the purposes mentioned in subsection is less than 1 hectare, and the clearance of such development projects shall be subjected to the condition that the same is recommended by Gram Sabha. Right, so recommendation is required. Okay, now coming back to the newspaper. So that is there. So it says that it's neither the government, not the human rights activists also, which are very positive about this, but they're not been using it as a conservation tool. So that is the theme over here. Launch Agnipath as a pilot project, right? So don't make it a full-scale thing. Make it as a pilot project. First, see what is the pros and cons, and then launch it. But I think the government has kind of made up its mind. So during a parliamentary panel meeting with Rajnath Singh, leaders demanded immediate withdrawal of the scheme. So parliamentary panel, that means parliamentary committees. Okay. Now here again we have, this is important. So MP's panel opposed mediation bill. So Parliamentary Standing Committee on Law, they have cautioned against making pre-litigation mediation pre-litigation mediation compulsory, and warned the center against the provision to give high courts power to frame rules for mediation. Okay. So what is mediation? Two people have disputes, they come, they sit together and discuss. So maybe when two friends have a fight, so your parents or some other friend would be mediating between two people. So it says when two people have disputes, so rather than going directly into the litigation stage, directly going to the courts, one must mediate amongst themselves. If that doesn't work, then go to the court. So mediation bill provides for the provisions as to how the mediation will take place. So let's see what is the dictionary meaning of mediation. Intervention in a dispute in order to resolve it. So this is being said by the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Law. Somewhere you can also see how these committees are functioning. Right? So this, we get to know their importance, we get to know. And this committee is being led by a BJP member. So always I keep saying this is consensus based. So this bill is introduced by obviously the ruling party over here. So the criticism is also coming from here only. Okay. So cautioned against making pre-litigation mediation compulsory. So this should be optional, and warned the center, because it should be compulsory. It should not be compulsory, because if you make compulsory, you have added another stage. So this will further increase the pendency of cases or increase the time of the dispute. It warned the center against the provision to give higher courts. Then it says that the mediation that takes place, the rules should be given, can be given by the high courts over here. Now imagine Parliament has made a law. Parliament has made a law. Then the judiciary is looking into what all things should be added to this. So somewhere it goes against the doctrine of separation of powers over here, right? So this should not be a thing over here. More detailing should come from the Parliament itself. More research, more study should be done. Legislative work should not be handed over to the judiciary, and for that matter, even executive. So we are seeing more and more of this delegated legislation. So that reform is required. We need to address this issue. Then this should be introduced in a phased manner. We should not have that from tomorrow we will have the mediation thing. Mediation law is applicable and everything has to go in accordance with that. First, introduce this in a phased manner and then introduce it in a complete full-fledged way. We can also study the challenges faced in the implementation of the pre-litigation mediation under the Consumer Commercial Courts Act. So that can be first studied and then it could be introduced. Then when it comes to disputes between the government entities, for that purpose, the mediation is not applicable. So that was questionable by the committee members. Then it has also recommended a framework as to what should be the composition of the mediation council, which would naturally look into the issue of the implementation of the mediation law. So it says it should include people who have knowledge and experience in mediation, or they have been associated with the problems relating to the alternate dispute resolution. So people who have expertise in this domain, they should be part of this council. Okay, so Supreme Court asked Maharashtra's speaker to defer disqualification process. Naturally, Malia gets 4-month jail term for contempt. AI-based Mandarin translation devices for Army. So Union Defense Minister unveils 75 AI-based product. Okay, so here again, I mean, naturally for national security, besides translation, there could be like monitoring via the different sensors that are there. You can use different sensors for monitoring of the border. So for various activities for national security, for hearing of conversations, all of that. So that is there, different applications are there. Besides role of AI in governance, that also can be looked into. AI, big data, the tools of the fourth industrial revolution. PM unveils national emblem atop the new parliamentary building. India said to beat China in population report. So in population, says the UN report over here. So by in 2023, with each counting more than 1.4 billion residents this year, naturally India is going to overtake. So by 2023, the population would be at more than 1.4 billion. Now it says that overall for the world, the population rise has been the slowest. So population has been increasing at the slowest rate since 1950. So having fallen below 1%. And since developing countries have the greater population rate, the increase is taking place. So they should take greater responsibility of caring for the planet. So that is a statement that has come from the United Nations Secretary General. Okay. Then Amarnath-like events, unpredictable and fine, they're unpredictable. So this statement is coming from the India Meteorological Department, whose parent agency is Ministry of Earth Sciences. So naturally, this is about disaster management. And what happened in Amarnath? There was a cloud burst that has taken place. So flash floods were found due to the sudden cloud formation. Naturally, a lot of rain took place suddenly in one place that resulted in a lot of water being flowing. So that is known as the flash floods. Okay. To be I'm critical of this over here because naturally it's not predictable where exactly it would take place, but the camping sites could be designed in a better way. It's said that this was more prone to floods. Okay, so this is it. So again, cloud formation, cloud burst, flash floods, mitigation measures that are required for it. So India's vulnerability to this. So this is important. We can still take a calculative guess, even if we cannot get the finer details as to where all places the flash floods would take place. These are known things. Europe frets over reduced gas supplies from Russia. Fine. Political stalemate persists in Sri Lanka. And they tell us to reduce the energy supply coming from oil from Russia. Okay, now coming on to the business section. So corporate profit margins likely dipped for third straight quarter, right? So corporate profit coming down, that means the ability to create jobs, ability to create more investments. More investments would mean more economic growth. So that probability will obviously come down. So it is dipped for 3 straight quarter, right? So this is not a good sign. So let's see what is the fourth quarter result. Normally in the fourth quarter, the sales are pushed for and the results improve. RBI sets up system to settle international trade in rupees, right? So one of the mitigation measures by the RBI. So reducing the dependence on dollar. India's imports of Russian oil set to surge to record. So Russia accounts for 20% of the shipments. So naturally, this is increasing over here. So which never took place. What never took place is now taking place because of this war. Oil marketing firms will likely post quarter one loss because they're selling it at a lower price. The fuel prices are high, so they have been procuring at a higher price, but they're selling in the market at a lower rate, naturally because of the inflation-related concern, political factors, all that. SAT urges Securities Appellate Tribunal urges SEBI to look at cane dividend case. We're not interested in cane dividend case. What we get to know that SEBI makes judgment on securities related matters about the conduct of the companies, and their judgments can be appealed at the Securities Appellate Tribunal. Now, since SEBI is a statutory body, SAT is also a statutory body. It's created by a law of the parliament. Top recruiters expect slowdown in tech hiring, so IT is also not doing well. This could be because of the pressure in the US economy, US and other developed economies. Now, please be mindful. We must be aware of what is happening in the sports domain. So there is World Cup taking place, FIH Women's World Cup. So title race, India has been eliminated. It's taking place in Spain. Right, so Wimbledon just took place. Formula 2, I don't know what the difference between Formula 1 and Formula 2. Then Arjun Babuta wins air rifle gold, the shooting World Cup in Changwon in Korea. Right, so this concludes our daily news analysis. So thank you for streaming in to our channel IASPrimers with me, Shubhashish. Bye-bye, take care, and all the best.